Greetings. We're here today to talk about using green living mulch to prevent weeds in ecological landscapes. And the reason we want to do that is because when you have a landscape like this, you don't want to spend all your time killing weeds. You want to spend time appreciating all the interactions going on in your landscape. I was just out looking at my front yard at this garden that you're looking at here, and I discovered what's called a robber fly, which for all the world looks like a bumblebee, except it's shaped kind of funny, and it's hanging out, sitting on plants, looking around as if it kind of acts like a dragonfly, and then it goes out and it grabs insects out of the air and sucks the juice out of them. And that's how it lives. I never heard of such a thing, discovered it today because I wasn't pulling weeds. If I'd been down there digging weeds, I wouldn't have even seen that thing. So you have to understand, if you want to prevent weeds, you have to understand them. And what do weeds like? They like bare ground, especially disturbed bare ground, but any kind of bare ground. So there have been different efforts made over the years to prevent bare ground. The gravel, the mulch, they don't work, people. The gravel, you see, eventually it fills up with dust and then weeds grow in it, and then you got all that rock in your way. The mulch, you know, those helicopters, those maple seeds, they're going to grow anyway. That's not going to prevent weeds. And none of these plants evolved growing in a bed of wood chip mulch. So just give up on this idea. It gets compacted over the summer. It's just no good. Much better is to prevent weeds by filling the ground with plants. But when you first plant a garden, you're not going to be able to fill every space with plants. It takes a while for it to fill in. So you have to use something to cover the ground. Use leaves. They fall from the sky every autumn. They're full of nutrients. They're the best amendment for your soil. The best thing, the only thing that we add to our garden at all besides plants is leaves from the neighbor's yard. Just because they're trying to get rid of them. Don't get rid of them. Whatever you do, don't pay anybody to get rid of them. Just keep them on site. Use them. I mow them up and fill in all the spaces in between the plants with leaves. After a while, I won't need them, you know, but I'll do something with them. But the best thing to use is plants. This red that you see is prairie smoke in between the plants, filling in. It grows very short. It's green as soon as the snow comes off. It greens up. And then it flowers starting in March. It's amazing. Prairie smoke, this idea of filling in between the plants with live ground cover plants, I first discovered from Thomas Rayner, who, along with Claudia West, wrote the book Planting in a Post-Wild World, which Doug Tallamy describes as the universal guide to sustainable landscaping we have all been waiting for. It really is. They figured a lot of stuff out, things that other gardeners know, that many gardeners do instinctively, but they thought about it and figured out why, and they explained it in this book. So I highly recommend it. And they recommend this, that you plant in layers. Layers are essential in the ecological landscape. You have horizontal layers, vertical layers, temporal layers, and the transitions between the layers is where a lot of the ecological action takes place. So layers are important, but they talk about layers in terms of the visual impact of the garden. You have your structural layers, which is your trees, shrubs, bigger perennials like the Joe Pye weed they show here, or maybe a Baptisia or a Culver's root, that present something you can see. From a distance, you can look at it and you can say, oh, there's that. And you know what it is, and you're not afraid of it. You know there's not a lion hanging out in there that's going to jump out and eat you, which is really how we interact with landscapes to a large extent. That's why we love lawns so much, because we know they're safe. But there's more to it than that. So here what you can do is underneath the structural layer, you have this seasonal theme layer, which is swaths and drifts of Echinacea, Liatris, like they show here, but also Monarda, Coreopsis, different things that give you a show at different times during the year, but it's in big, bold swaths so that you recognize it, you know what you're looking at. But then all in between, underneath all of that, you plant the ground cover layer. Cool season plants that are active when the weeds are looking to germinate in the spring. And these are already covering the ground, sucking up the moisture and taking care of that, preventing the weeds. What are these plants? Well, the sedges are great. The sedges are essential to our ecosystems. What they do, because they're active so early in the year, in the spring, when the tree roots are saturated with water because it's been raining and the snow's been melting, these things are, the trees haven't leafed out yet, but these things are sucking the moisture out of the air so that oxygen can get into the ground to the tree roots, keeping them alive. That's very important. And then in the summer, when these things are dormant, because they are dormant in the heat of the summer, but every night they collect dew. They put it back in the ground. They don't use it because they're dormant, but they put it in the ground where other plants can use it. They're great plants. The prairie smoke, of course, is beautiful. Here it is in June, putting on its seed heads, which are spectacular. Look at that. Look at that. All right. Here's the pussy toes on the left, which covers the ground very densely in the spring. The wine cups in the right, they lay on the ground in the spring and cover it, and then when they're going to bloom, they kind of rise up and show off. Great weed plants for that. This is golden ragwort, and here it is in April, and covering ground very effectively. It's about to bloom, and it may not be something that you want to, once the blooms are done, you might want to leave them up, you might want to cut them back down, but these are young plants and they've already covered that much ground. They're going to cover a lot more before they're done. This is Robin's Plantain. I have no idea why it's named that, but it's a fleabane, makes this nice daisy flower in May, covers ground very densely in April, which is what we're after, our violets. Our violets are so beautiful, and there's so much diversity in them. And you can, if you have them in a place and you decide you don't want them, they're easy to weed out, but in the meantime, they cover ground like this. This is what we call our bird garden, where we didn't even kill the turf. We just planted a bunch of native shrubs and let the shrubs shade out the turf. And sure enough, the turf died and the violets took over. And over time, since this picture was taken, the violets have started thinning out because the shade's very dense now. It's too dense for the violets to really grow that densely. So we've started filling in between the violets with our native ginger, which forms such a dense mat that nothing comes up through it. And it's green early in the season. These understory plants, you can plant them in combinations, and you can plant these combinations complexly. You can mix them up because it's like a Persian rug, where from a distance, you see the big structures, but when you get up close, it's the little details that you enjoy. And so you can really enjoy the little details, and this can be the mat underneath the whole garden, filling it up. And that's what these people have figured out. And also these seasonal theme plants, some of them form rosettes that cover ground early in the season. And that helps you too. You don't have to fill up every space with the ground cover plants. You can also fill up space early in the season with some of your seasonal theme plants, like this Eastern bee balm, which here it is covering ground in April. Here it is in June, blooming. Here it is in November, still gorgeous. It's a great plant for this, covers ground. Here is the grass that you see in the foreground, is prairie dropseed. And then the yellow flowers that you see is our native alum root. Here they are in June, I would say. Obviously beautiful, but here they are in April. The prairie dropseed, the dead foliage is covering ground. Do not remove organic matter, plant debris from your garden. Leave it there. It's the lifeblood of the ecosystem. You need it, and it's keeping the weed, it's suppressing the weeds. And then look at that heuchera in the middle, that big rosette. There's no weeds coming up there. So plant things like that grow those rosettes. This is the this one always gets me for some reason. Queen of the Prairie, which my wife calls, this is why I forget, because my wife calls it Dancing Ladies. Look how lyrical that thing is. It's beautiful. Yeah, this is Queen of the Prairie, which there it was in July. Here it is in April, starting to cover ground. Here's Virginia waterleaf and our native geranium covering ground in April. Here's that same geranium in June, blending into the composition, making a show. Beautiful plant. And the same goes with our scarlet bee balm. On the right here, look what a mat that's formed. That's in April. That's creeping, going to keep growing. You need to form walls using other plants. You can use sedges, or you can use prairie smoke to form a wall to prevent the monarda from creeping through, so you're not all the time having to dig it back. Here's yarrow, covering ground in April and making a show later in the season. This is probably right around the 4th of July. That's when my garden is the prettiest, 4th of July. This is a plant that shooting stars do not cover ground, but you need to have as many of them in your garden as you can have because they are just beautiful. And this is spotted bee balm, which is a short-lived plant that suppresses weeds by the very fact that it produces so much seed that when you have a disturbance in the garden, this is what will come up, and you can weed out the other things and let this take over. It brings in all kinds of insects. Great plant and a fantastic winter interest. One of my favorites. This is what these plants do for you. This is a sedge that was doing really well up above. Down below, we planted all kinds of different things over the years, and nothing did well. Nothing took over. And then one year, the sedge came up down below from seed from up above. And we decided, what'll happen if we let that grow? Well, that happened. That's what these plants do for you. The plants understand this stuff better than us, so our job is to learn to understand the plants, learn their natural history, how they live in the real world, besides these contrived places that we create, and then let them take over. These are some resources you might find useful. There are no books by Heather Holm here because we've loaned them all out. Thank you very much. Please remember, it's all about the plants.